Dragon's Lair.
Released in 1983, Dragon's Lair was an arcade hit who had many gamers coming back for more, while others were left scratching their heads trying to figure it all out. The game made use of new Laserdisc technology which allowed the use of full-motion video, all created by animator Don Bluth. Players take the role of Dirk the Daring on his quest to rescue Princess Daphne from the evil dragon Singe. The gameplay is very different than anything else in the arcades at that time. Instead of having full control over your character, players were required to make very specific movements with the joystick at key moments during the animation. Making the correct movement would award the player and have them continue on to the next scene. Making the wrong move would cost the player a life, resulting in the display of a usually humorous death sequence. The type of gameplay used by Dragon's Lair usually garners a love it or hate it attitude among gamers. I remember when I first came across the arcade game at my local Chuck E. Cheese and just how frustrated I was when the game appeared to be broken and it wouldn't accept my controller input. It wasn't until a few years later when I played the IBM PC port of the game that I learned how to properly play. It has since become a favorite of mine. Since most home video game consoles and computers were unable to handle the full motion video used in the game, developers had to be creative when bringing the Dragon's Lair experience home. Let's take a look at a few of those ports now. The Nintendo Entertainment System's port of Dragon's Lair is infamous with gamers. It's known to be one of the most unfair and grueling experiences brought to a home console. In this version, players are presented with a side-scrolling platformer. At first glance, many are impressed with the graphics, and you'd even be fooled into thinking a great game was ahead of you. Unfortunately, shoddy controls and infuriating gameplay completely kill the experience. Many gamers have never even seen much more than the first screen of the game, as its constant traps and odd gameplay mechanics constantly work against the player. After returning to this port after several years, I've begun to look at it in a bit of a new light. In the past, I saw only a platform game gone totally wrong, but I think the developers were trying to do a little more than that. There's the feeling that the developers were attempting to bring the trial and error one-move mechanics from the arcade game to a side-scrolling platformer on the NES. Unfortunately, the two types of gameplay simply don't work together. After several attempts trying to play this game, I can only tend to make it through to the midpoint of level 1. I constantly get stuck due to one of the most impossible jumps I've ever experienced in the game. The jump itself wouldn't be so difficult with more responsive controls, but as presented in this port, it's simply a frustrating experience. You know what, maybe I'm being completely unfair here. Maybe I'm not playing this game properly. Let's take a look at the game's demo to see how the developers actually intended us to play this game. Okay, maybe the next demo's better. So what I'm personally going to take away from this is that the developers knew that this was such a horrible game that they themselves didn't even want to play it. Let's take a look to see what developers had in store for the next generation Nintendo platform. Dragon's Lair on the Super Nintendo completely gets rid of the trial and error gameplay from the original and sticks with a standard side-scrolling platformer. Unfortunately, this game is littered with bugs, control problems, and a lackluster presentation that makes it extremely hard to recommend. Overall, the graphical style of the game is quite impressive. It really does look like you're controlling a cartoon. The bright, vibrant colors really help bring the Dragon's Lair world to life. Character animations are also very fluid, adding to the visual appeal. Other than the graphics, I have a real hard time finding much else I can speak about in a positive manner. The control problems are the first thing that you're going to run into. Trying to stop your character from moving feels like he's constantly standing on ice. he'll slide in every which direction. This problem is only further worsened by swinging your sword when trying to stop. Doing so, your character Dirk can easily slide 3 or 4 character lengths forward, easily pushing you into an enemy or down a pit to your death. Interacting with the environment can also be extremely difficult. For example, several levels have ropes Dirk can use to reach higher platforms. In order to have Dirk hold onto the rope, you must jump at them from the side. Jumping from directly underneath is a futile effort and Dirk will never grab hold. The worst thing for me in this port is the music in the game. It just feels completely out of place. Let's take a listen to a few examples throughout the game. I think it's a real shame that the developers didn't put more effort into the music. The music in the original arcade game is so iconic. Oh, there's one thing that I completely forgot to mention about this port. Did I mention that he has the ability to use throwing stars against his enemies in this game? Since when did Dirk become a ninja? I'm sorry, Data East, but you really did release a subpar game for the Super Nintendo here. Okay, you know what? I'm done looking at these crappy ports of Dragon's Lair. Let's take a look at a great one. The Coleco Adam port of Dragon's Lair is easily my favorite. To be honest, I even prefer it to the original arcade game. It's a perfect mix of platforming and trial and error gameplay, but unlike the NES version, they're not presented at the same time. The game is played over a total of 9 screens, 6 giving you full control over Dirk as he tackles dangers such as swinging ropes over fire and trying to stay on falling platforms. The other 3 screens offer the same single-move gameplay from the arcade. Instead of utilizing full-motion video, the game instead uses standard 2D sprite-based graphics to recreate key sequences from the original arcade version. The effect works surprisingly well and is a joy to play. The graphics in this game are fantastic for their time. The vibrant color palette makes the game feel like the cartoon on which it's based. Dirk's character animation is very fluid in both the platforming and trial and error segments. While the graphics definitely will catch your attention, it's the music that blows me away every time I play it. To this day, I still catch myself humming some of the tunes found in this game. They each fit the theme perfectly and provide that perfect ambiance for Dirk's adventure. I still remember the day when I finally defeated the Dragon Singe and rescued Princess Daphne. I still get a similar thrill when completing this port today. I highly recommend this version of Dragon's Lair to both fans and non-fans alike. Now it's important to note that this version of Dragon's Lair can also be found on other home computers such as the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64. I personally prefer this version due to the enhanced visuals, sound, and responsive controls. If you're a fan of Dragon's Lair and want to experience the game at home in its original form, you can find great versions on Blu-ray, iOS, PS3, and the Wii. Or you can check out the Game Boy Color version to see full motion video on an older handheld system. Before I sign off here, I'd really love to hear about your past experiences with Dragon's Lair, including which is your favorite home port of the game. Leave your comments in the section below. Thanks again for watching, everyone. I'll be back with a new review shortly. Golden out.